They thought the dawn watch would be routine, but at 0417 local time, the Caribbean proved otherwise. The USS George Washington cut a steady line through international waters, still, calm, and unchallenged. The way American carrier groups have sailed for generations, no enemy navy dares to stand in that path. Not if they understand what it means to confront an entire strike group. Then, the radar picture shifted. 3 fast Venezuelan patrol boats appeared on the horizon, sliding out of the darkness at roughly 28 knots. Their wakes carved sharp white scars across the sea as they crossed the projected bow of the carrier group, forming a deliberate hostile water barrier. This was no accident, no navigational error. This was a challenge. Collision alarms echoed through the hangar deck. Screens lit up as the contacts closed inside 12 nautical miles. Close enough to prove intent. Close enough that Venezuela was treating the open ocean like its own security zone. But the United States did not turn. Not 1 degree. And Venezuela had just made a mistake. By 0419, the formation tightened. The 3 Venezuelan patrol vessels shifted into a clean V-shape, still holding speeds above 28 knots. They weren't shadowing, they were steering directly into the future path of the carrier strike group, as if rehearsing a maneuver they had practiced more than once. Every slight turn of their bows pulled them deeper into the natural corridor the George Washington would cross within minutes. Radar operators aboard the carrier called out bearing changes in quick succession. Voices sharpened. Collision alarms rippled through the steel hallways. Sailors snapped into motion, securing loose gear, verifying communications, checking watertight doors. These weren't actions taken during surveillance. These were actions taken when a foreign vessel pushes into the danger band. And that band, 12 nautical miles, is no small thing for a ship the size of a nuclear carrier. Inside that zone, reaction time shrinks dramatically. A carrier cannot reverse. It cannot pivot like a patrol craft. Any small vessel inside that ring can shape an entire encounter simply through positioning. The Venezuelan ships held perfect alignment. Bows aimed not outward into open water, but directly across the carrier's projected track. Classic attack geometry. The same angular pattern naval analysts brief when discussing bow interceptions and collision forcing. No slowdown. No evasive signals. Navigation lights bright and aggressive. Escorts tightened formation. Watch officers shifted posture from routine monitoring to active threat assessment, and the realization settled over the bridge. This wasn't surveillance. It wasn't a random patrol. Venezuela was testing American resolve, directly, publicly, and deliberately. Imagine standing on the bridge in that pre-dawn half-light. Alarms humming in the background. 3 fast patrol boats pushing toward your carrier with zero hesitation. The question every officer silently asks himself is simple. Do we hold course or do we blink? The U.S. Navy's answer came quietly, professionally. USS Gravely, the guided missile destroyer riding starboard escort, increased turbine output with a low-rising growl that everyone on deck could feel through the steel. The destroyer shifted into a calculated arc, sliding into the intercept line between the patrol craft and the carrier. No panic, no sudden turn, just cold precision. At sea, the ship that takes the decisive angle first owns the encounter. Gravely claimed that angle. The destroyer's bow cut directly across the Venezuelan trajectory, forming a steel wall that forced the approaching vessels into a choice: alter course or risk collision, with an Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer capable of ending them in seconds. Above, an MH-sixty Romeo Seahawk spun up, rotors biting the air, lifting into an overwatch orbit above the destroyer. Its presence signaled 3 things every adversary understands: surveillance, overwatch, and escalation potential. The destroyer became a soft barrier, not firing, not threatening, just existing in the exact place Venezuela needed to pass. A move used by navies worldwide to reveal true intent. Now the Venezuelans would have to decide: change course and de-escalate, hold course and ignite a confrontation. Gravely waited, steady as iron. The Venezuelan vessels refused to blink. Even with Gravely blocking their path, they held formation tight, wakes long and aggressive, pushing forward as if momentum itself could intimidate a carrier strike group. If they expected hesitation, they didn't get it. From above, the Seahawk documented everything: angles, speed changes, heading adjustments. Live video streamed into the destroyer's CIC, giving commanders a clean picture of every movement. From the surface, Gravely maintained its intercept line like a blade. Their intent was clear: pressure the American fleet into altering course, a symbolic victory Caracas could point to as proof of regional dominance. But the United States answered with visibility, not aggression. Gravely's 5-inch Mark 45 gun rotated off its neutral axis, not locking, not aiming, just pointing. Every Navy understands that signal. It says, "We are ready." The CIWS dome began passive tracking, sensors humming. SPY-1 maintained wide-area surveillance in a non-threatening mode, silent, but unmistakably alert. The MH-60 Romeo widened its orbit, a sentry above open water. Deterrence by visibility, showing capability without crossing the line into provocation. The psychological weight of that posture is enormous. Every sailor knows that when a destroyer angles its main gun and activates passive envelopes, you are one decision away from escalation. Still, the Venezuelan patrol craft pushed on. 4 nautical miles. Too close for comfort. Too close for mistakes. They were driving into a zone where one wrong turn, one misread wake, one delayed order could trigger an international crisis. And still, neither side spoke. The silence finally broke. On the American side, USS Gravely transmitted the first broadcast on open frequency. Calm, steady, perfectly scripted. The carrier group was navigating a lawful, internationally recognized maritime corridor. All vessels in proximity were expected to operate safely. Every ship within radio range heard it. Fishing boats, merchant freighters, coastal stations. The United States wanted the world to know exactly what was happening. The Venezuelans refused to answer by voice. Instead, the lead patrol craft hoisted maritime signal flags, symbols that, taken together, implied territorial enforcement and expanded security authority. A visual declaration rather than a verbal one, a way to challenge without saying a word. Sailors aboard the George Washington watched through binoculars, interpreting each flag. The message was simple: Venezuela was asserting control over water that did not legally belong to them. 2 lines of steel held their course, neither side turning, slowing, or surrendering position. For the United States, even a 1-degree change would imply acknowledgement of Venezuelan authority. That precedent could become political leverage in every future encounter. Holding course was not stubbornness. It was strategy. Inside Gravely, technicians mapped thermal signatures, engine frequencies, wake patterns. The Venezuelan ships were still running above 20 knots. Aggressive, deliberate, unmistakably confrontational. Then the silence returned. 3 minutes where no one spoke, no one signaled. A psychological duel of momentum versus discipline. Wake against wake. Steel against will. Every sailor on watch felt it. The invisible line between deterrence and conflict was now razor thin, and someone had to blink. 4 nautical miles. The gray zone. At this distance, the ocean itself becomes a weapon. Reaction time is measured in seconds. Misjudged wakes can become ramming angles. One nervous helmsman can trigger decades of diplomatic fallout. Gravely held formation flawlessly, neither speeding up nor slowing down. George Washington maintained her 20-knot transit unbothered, unflinching. The entire American line radiated discipline. Sensors across the strike group sharpened without escalating. Gravely's main gun stayed angled. Thermal and passive radar systems painted the Venezuelan hulls with a steady, unwavering picture. Not aggressive, simply ready. Silence rolled across the water. Not peace, pressure. Officers on the bridge watched tiny deviations in wake patterns, hoping to read intention before intention became action. The Venezuelan ships still held tight geometry, still ran at high speed, still pressed forward. Then the shift came. A small change, but unmistakable. The lead Venezuelan vessel dropped throttle from the high 20s into the upper teens. Seconds later, the two trailing boats mirrored the reduction. The wakes softened. The V-shape loosened. It was the first physical indicator of de-escalation. And at sea, speed tells the truth long before flags or radios do. The Americans held steady. The Venezuelans blinked. 3 minutes earlier, both sides had approached the precipice. Now, the pressure began to slip. Quietly, reluctantly, inevitably. Without a shot, without a warning, without a single American deviation, Venezuela began to yield. Washington held the line. Caracas stepped back. The Venezuelan formation finally peeled away. Not abruptly, never abruptly, but with a reluctant face-saving slide toward the east-southeast. Their bows angled out of the intercept corridor. Their wakes curved away instead of in. From above, the Seahawk recorded the retreat. From the surface, Gravely remained steady. Weapons quiet, but unmistakably ready. And the George Washington, steady at 20 knots, never altered a single degree, of course. Presence beat pressure. Discipline beat momentum. Venezuela had tried to block a United States carrier strike group in water that belongs to no nation. The Americans never flinched. And in the end, Venezuela stepped aside. No missiles, no gunfire, yet the message landed harder than steel. The United States Navy sails where it chooses. Before we close, answer this. If you were on that bridge at dawn, 3 hostile patrol craft bearing down on your bow, would you have held the line? Comment below and subscribe for the next Ocean Showdown.